Hi, my name is Bruno Moreland and I teach AP African American Studies. And in this series, I'm going to go over all the required sources in the AP African American Studies curriculum. Today, we're looking at topic 2.5, slave auctions and the domestic slave trade. There's two required sources. The first one is an excerpt from the slave narrative 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. And the second one is a slave auction advertisement from South Carolina in 1859. But before we get into all of that, I want to provide some context about how slavery was used in the United States prior to the 1800s. Initially, slavery was used on tobacco plantations in the east coast of the United States. Over time, soil depletion and a lower profit margin for farmers led to a decline of the use of the institution. However, before the century ended, the invention of the cotton gin made cotton a more profitable crop to start growing. In combination with the removal of American Indians from the southeast of the United States in the 1830s, it opened up vast amounts of lands for farmers to move into and start growing cotton using enslaved labor. As most of the northern states at this point started to enact gradual abolition laws, a new forced migration of enslaved people started to take place, and it was called the Second Middle Passage. This transported millions of enslaved people from the north to the south to work on these types of cotton plantations. And in 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was enacted by Congress in order to provide a compromise between the growing difference in the number of slave states and free states. This made it harder for enslaved people from the South to find freedom in the North, and it made it easier for slave catchers to accuse free black people in the North of being runaways and then being put into slavery when they were born free. This is what we see in Solomon Northup's life experience, even though he was enslaved before the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act. He was born free in New York in the early 1800s, and in 1841, he was lured to Washington, D.C. with the promise of a job as a musician. Instead, he was kidnapped and then sold into slavery, working in various different plantations in Louisiana, until finally, in 1853, he was able to make contact with some family and friends in New York that sent for his freedom papers to prove that he was actually free. The excerpt from the book that we're looking at, however, is really more about what the experience is like for enslaved people to be in auction houses or slave markets. Because Northup was literate when he was enslaved, he's able to give us a very clear description of what the experience was like for enslaved people that were being sold. First, he begins with how they were expected to line up and dress as new potential buyers entered into the slave market. In the first place, we were required to wash thoroughly and those with beards to shave. We were then furnished with new suit each, cheap but clean. The men had hat, coat, shirt, pants, and shoes. The women frocks of calico and handkerchiefs to bind about their heads. We were now conducted into a large room in the front part of the building to which the yard was attached in order to be properly trained before the admission of customers. The men were arranged on one side of the room, the women on the other. The tallest was placed at the head of the row, then the next tallest, and so on in the order of their respective heights. Emily was at the foot of the line of women. Freeman charged us to remember our places, exhorted us to appear smart and lively, sometimes threatening and again holding out various inducements. During the day, he exercised us in the art of looking smart and moving to our places with exact precision. Next, he describes what it was like to witness a family separation that was so common at slave auctions and slave markets. In the excerpt, we'll see a woman named Eliza who has two kids, Randall and Emily, and her little boy Randall is sold away without little thought about what it would do for their family. The same man also purchased Randall. The little fellow was made to jump and run across the floor and perform many other feats, exhibiting his activity and condition. All the time the trade was going on, Eliza was crying aloud and wringing her hands. She besought the man not to buy him unless he also bought herself and Emily. She promised in that case to be the most faithful slave that ever lived. The man answered that he could not afford it, and then Eliza burst into a paroxysm of grief, weeping plaintively. Freeman turned around to her savagely with his whip in his uplifted hand, ordering her to stop her noise or he would flog her. He would not have such work, such sniveling, and unless she seized that minute, he would take her to the yard and give her 100 lashes. It would have been one thing to witness that type of grief from a mother losing her child, and then for the enslaver or the seller to not show any remorse and instead promise punishment for continuing to weep for her child going away. The second document is an advertisement for an upcoming slave auction. Possibly that's a result of the death of an enslaver. You can see at the top it says Sanders versus Sanders. So it's possibly the heirs of the enslaver trying to liquefy the assets or get cash in order to split the estate in a more equal way. Because there's many notes written on the side of each of the people that are being up for auction, this is possibly a poster that belonged to a buyer and had time to inspect the people that were going to be put up for auction. On the left side, there's descriptive notes about the enslaved people. And then on the right side, there's some more cryptic symbols that are likely his estimation of the value of those people that he was going to bid on. And they're likely made in secret or cryptic marks so that other buyers wouldn't be able to see what he was willing to pay. As you go down the list of names, you'll see that there are some common words that continue to crop up describing the people that were being up for auction. One of the common ones is prime. This was generally reserved for young men who are in the prime of their life, who are healthy and strong and could potentially be productive in a plantation. You'll also see the word breeding. So that means that this was a woman that would have likely been purchased for the purpose of having more kids and adding to the estate of an enslaver by having another enslaved person impregnating her or impregnating her himself. Which then leads us to another word that you see quite often, which is fine or very fine. And as you'll notice, this is mostly written next to young women in their 20s or late teens. It is meant to comment on their appearance. Here, the potential buyer is objectifying these women as potential objects of lust. There's evidence in this auction poster that rape between enslaver and enslaved was common, as some of them are labeled white or nearly white or even mulatto, which is a descriptor for someone who is half black and half white. Finally, at the end of the list of the advertisement, some of the people that are listed for auction are labeled as town Negroes. This means that they would have probably had more skills or more knowledge, probably literate, they could probably do math or help with accounting, or would be trusted to going into town to get supplies and then coming back. The last thing that I'll point out is that the 99 people are grouped into what were called lots. Based on the gender and the age of the people in these lots, you can assume that these are family units, and some of them are multi-generational family units. Some as old as their 80s, and some as young as 6 or 9 months. There was no guarantee that any of the lots would stay together. Many of them would have been purchased away individually, and the same scene that Solomon Northup had witnessed, a family separation, could have played out several times over the course of one day in this auction. So those are the two sources that we have for today. I'd like to know what you think of them, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.